Petrochemicals are chemicals derived from crude oil and natural gas. The toxic practice of the petrochemical industry is negatively affecting us all, and our environment and climate is drastically changing. Petrochemical plants and refineries emit 10 to 15% of the U.S.'s carbon pollution that is driving climate change. We are the consumers in which these industries continue to profit from. The petrochemical industry produces plastics, fertilizers, pesticides, gasoline, cosmetics, fashion, and a plethora of more chemicals that are a part of our everyday use in this society. These chemical plants have strategically been placed in what are called sacrifice zones, predominantly along the Gulf Coast and Ohio River Valley, putting Black and brown people and poor communities at risk of environmental, health, and economic hardships, and too often, causing death. Greatly known for their entertaining rodeos and delicious barbecue, Houston, Texas is a beautiful city and has a diverse community that expresses a common demand when it comes to being exposed to toxic chemicals. They want to live in a safe environment. Some of the most impactful voices who are on the front lines of the environmental and climate justice movement gives us a look into the life and injustices that they face daily when it comes to the petrochemical industry in their beloved city of Houston, Texas. And although some may have different cultural backgrounds, they stand in unity when it comes to fighting for environmental and climate justice for all.
My name is Evacuation. I live in Houston, Texas, in the community of Magnolia Park, and I'm the founder and director of Fenceline Watch, an environmental justice organization based in the East End of Houston. I got involved in environmental justice from a really young age. Being really young, we would go and pick all the fruit, all the herbs, and we were taught how to harvest and how to plant our own food. Growing up in Houston was always really warm. There was always a place to call home.
I am Reverend James Caldwell. I am the founder and director of COCO, which stands for Coalition of Community Organizations, and that's here in Houston, Texas. We're going back a bit, okay? But now, life growing up here in Houston, the community I grew up in, which is Fifth Ward, was fun. It was a united community. Everybody knew one another. As a matter of fact, I'm one of 7 children, and everybody in the neighborhood was our parents. Our working relationship with EDF, Environmental Defense Fund, and TSU, Texas A&M, has enabled us to get community members, which we refer to as block captains. It's our data to action plan.
I'm Grace T. Lewis. I am a senior health scientist at the Environmental Defense Fund. I started working with COCO 2019 to give them the data to help make it actionable in their work to address environmental justice, longstanding environmental disparities, health disparities, issues that have been systemically burdening communities in the Houston area.
Chemicals like creosote, a compounded mixture of multiple chemicals that is produced at the petrochemical plants and used as pesticides and wood preservation by Union Pacific Railroad, is having a harmful effect on the residents of the Fifth Ward as Union Pacific continues to dump the toxic and hazardous chemical waste contaminating the community's soil, air, and water. These petrochemical companies are responsible for continuing to make and sell this dangerous carcinogenic chemical, even though it was banned in homes in the United States and considered a cancer-causing product in 1985 by the EPA. It is now only used for commercial use.
My name is Sandra Edwards. I'm a resident of Fifth Ward. I am a Fifth Ward block captain. I have been for 2 years now. And we go out to sample the soil and the water in the community to make sure that we are safe.
I am Dr. Danae King, and I am the Associate Director of the Bullard Center. for environmental and climate justice at Texas Southern University. One project that we're doing is collaborating with the Environmental Defense Fund and Texas A&M University, as well as with the Coalition of Community Organizations with Reverend Caldwell in the Fifth Ward community and his phenomenal block captains. We've been doing sampling as it relates to PAHs and some other heavy metals, particularly for the creosote contamination. With preliminary data, it suggests that we are seeing PAHs in the soil across the Fifth Ward community.
At a public town hall meeting, residents from the Fifth Ward were given their final opportunity to express their concerns about the Texas Commission on Environmental Quality, or TCEQ, granting the proposed renewal of a 30-year permit to Union Pacific Railroads, which will allow them to continue dumping the toxic chemical creosote in the Fifth Ward community. Childhood leukemia in the Fifth Ward is 5 times greater than the state's average. Unfortunately, LaTanya Payne's 13-year-old son, Corithian, lost his 5-year battle to this vicious disease.
Corinthian, he was a child that loved people. He had a big heart. He had a desire to become a chef when he became an adult. He loved to cook dinner for us, as he became older. And he just loved family and friends. So he was initially diagnosed with leukemia in 2016. And then he went through the 3 years of chemotherapy, 3.5 years, and he was in remission and he was doing good. And then he just started complaining of pain again, which was the initial symptom that he had in 2016, just dreadful pain. We made several trips to MD Anderson, and that's when we found out that, the leukemia had returned.
This grieving mother also discovered that she would have to battle cancer on her own shortly after the passing of her son, Corithian.
So I was diagnosed with triple-negative breast cancer on the right side 3 months after Corithian in 2016. And so I went through my rounds of chemotherapy, radiation, and lumpectomy, and everything was fine, doing my annual mammograms and following with my oncologist. And then September 14th, I had my annual mammogram, and they found something on the left side this time, and it's the same triple-negative breast cancer.
You to sit up here and tell us that it is not coming out of your fence. A fence don't stop nothing. The last I checked. You see this straight, this is half of my street. This not even all of my street. This is half of it. And if I'm not
I am very angry with Union Pacific Railroad for the environmental injustice that has been going on so long in this community, that has affected so many in this community, for having to experience the loss of a child and what he endured, going through this chemotherapy treatment and the regimen of chemotherapy, and even with myself, the emotional distress, the physical distress. Union Pacific, I'm appalled.
They look at us for our color. They look at us for our poorness, that we don't have the money or the economy coming in like they do. They look at the area we stay in. They just look down on us. That's our challenge. They don't look at us as humans like everybody else. They look down on us. And if they say they don't, they're lying, because you have shown us better than telling. You don't have to tell us. It's your actions show us how you look at us. So the challenge is, you look at us as if we don't deserve. We don't deserve the same as everybody else, and that's not right. We're human too.
Imagine your home being a few feet away from a chemical plant, where a chemical spill or explosion can happen at any moment. The foul odor of these chemicals is so intense and potent in these neighborhoods that it's impossible for residents to enjoy being outside.
The smell is strong. There's no way to escape it here.
People in frontline communities, fence line communities are always just like, our community is so quiet, you know, nobody's outside, people leave you alone. Nobody wants to be outside. You know, you can see the tops of these things. They're not safe. They catch fire. You can tell from the char, you know, folks are right next to these things and they're up in flames.
In Fifth Ward, on a given day, one train can block every entrance except for one in Fifth Ward.
These are bomb trains, and everybody knows these large black trains as bomb trains because we know they carry chemicals. And it's all going back to the fact that Houston and the Houston Ship Channel is the largest chemicals port in our entire nation.
These chemical plants have no limits, even when it comes to kids.
Right here, this is Unidad Park. And that's another pattern we see in our communities is just, there's a refinery, there's a park. There's a refinery, there's a park. There's a chemical plant, there's a park. And right after Hurricane Harvey, this park had kids who were just, you know, skateboarding, and we let them know that the flares are toxic and they probably shouldn't be out here, but, you know, they're just kids. This is the playground that our kids play in here at Hartman Park, and, you know, you can see that the partnership is with Valero. This is a mural that's left. It's not even that old, but it's what kids in the community see the community as. So I know these look like pools and everything, but these are actually the storage tanks that were right across from the Contanda ones that hold thousands of barrels of chemicals. It's images like this that let you know that kids see the problem.
Most residents in these vulnerable communities have no choice but to shelter in place when there is a spill or explosion, because there is nowhere else for them to go.
What is the evacuation route? You know, that's something that we've always struggled with here too, because it's not like shelters in place don't happen here. They happen multiple times where folks are told, you know, go inside. We go inside, we close the windows, doors, shut off the air conditioners, put plastic all over everything. But for how long can we stand that in temperatures like today that are going to get in the 90s and the 110 degrees?
Chemical leaks and spills are more common than you think from these petrochemical plants. Recently at Lyondell-Basell chemical plant, 2 workers lost their lives and multiple workers were hospitalized after a 100,000-pound spill of acidic acid was released. When spills such as these happen in places like Galena Park, Baytown, or Manchester Park, where there is a heavy population of a Spanish-speaking community, the language barrier can make getting the message to the people difficult, being that most of them do not speak English.
Getting information out is one of the biggest issues for Baytown. So if there is something like a chemical fire or a release, the first people to know about it are always going to be, you know, high resource neighbors, and it's never going to be, you know, your Latinos who have language barriers. It's not going to be your historically black communities. It's not going to be folks who live in the apartments. It's going to be folks who have more resources, who speak English, predominantly white communities. A lot of times people are actually outside either washing their car, doing laundry, or mowing the lawn, like things that you do every day. Meanwhile, in the background, you have these big old black plumes of smoke, and you gotta question yourself, you know, what's going on and why aren't I being told what's happening?
Environmental racism always seems to show its face when it comes to the petrochemical industry and the Black and brown poor communities.
Communities like Fifth Ward, like Pleasantville, like Manchester, they are the ones where they've been there for a long time and industry has just grown up around them.
Most families living in these low-income communities do not have access to health care if or when they become ill. This is a way of life for residents in Manchester Park, Fifth Ward Baytown, and countless other communities in the Houston area. The negative health and economic effects that the petrochemical industry is having on these communities by producing these toxic chemicals is beyond heartbreaking.
Sometimes, depending on how close the industrial source of pollution might be, whether or not there is some contamination maybe in groundwater, and also soil contamination. So those kinds of exposures then lead to things like asthma, respiratory illnesses, lung cancer, so leukemia, cancers that are specifically associated with some of the benzene and toluene exposures.
We don't know what's coming out of the flares, so it could be a cancer-causing chemical. It could be something that causes hormone imbalances, something that affects eyesight or causes low birth weights in pregnant women in our communities.
If we have a chemical explosion or a release, I'll get rashes again, like in the back of my neck, and I'll have to use steroid cream that was actually given to me by another environmental justice organizer because we don't have insurance or medical care.
The water over here is bad because I had rashes in my neck and my back. I use the cortisone time I get out the shower. You shouldn't have to. Time you take a bath, the last I checked, bath's supposed to clean you, not burn you. This is how I have to put on my body time I get out the shower to keep from breaking out blisters. It gets so bad it blisters. It swells up and it has pus coming out. It's on my back and my neck. If I don't use this when I first get out the shower, and this is not from dry skin, this is from the water. It's acid in our water.
Seeing eye to eye is a common ground when it comes to stopping these petrochemical companies from polluting their neighborhoods. No matter what their background is, these Houstonians are coming together for one goal, and that is to make sure that they get justice in the fight for a clean and safe environment.
We know that there have been these institutional systemic environmental racism, climate justice, lack of equity to a lot of communities that really need to be addressed. And how do we use that data to, number one, assess what is causing the disadvantage, where do we need to allocate the resources, and how do we direct the policies to the people who need it the most?
And the enforcement would then make us, I think, a safer community. And it may also encourage our petrochemical companies to, convert to cleaner technologies and really think about how to make the transition to a much safer and cleaner way to do what they do.
News recently broke that the petrochemical plant Lyondell-Basell is set to permanently close in December 2023.
Being an advocate, we don't run away from fires, we run to fires to get the reality of what's going on the ground. And with that, I know that as someone who is yet another person that doesn't have health insurance, I'm putting my life at risk every single day. The doctor told me, you most likely won't be able to have kids. That alone has given me the drive, anger, passion, love to continue doing what I'm doing.
We need people to vote. We need them to put into office people who are dedicated and committed to environmental justice, climate justice, to protecting the people who are at greatest risk and most disadvantaged, people who are dedicated to making improvements and changes, positive changes for the communities that live next to industrial facilities.
With the support of Houston's Mayor Sylvester Turner and United States Congresswoman Sheila Jackson Lee on hand, the community finally felt like they were not in the fight against the giant corporations alone.
And I'm here today speaking on behalf of the City of Houston that we stand in opposition to the hazardous waste permit. This proposal
The idea of our commentary is to be able to show to the state of Texas that there is absolute unity on your behalf. Absolute unity. You've heard from the mayor. You see the representatives that are here. Now, on behalf of the United States Congress and the 18th Congressional District in particular, I have to stand in opposition to the draft permit being rendered at this time.
Our local officials and our state government have stepped up. They did something I had never seen them do. They came together and they fought for us, for the residents.
While accomplishing some wins on their mission for a clean and safe environment, these Houstonians are motivated to keep fighting, knowing that there are more battles to conquer.
We get together, we come as one. It's not such a thing as Fifth Ward, Cashmere Garden, Denver Harbor. We are one. And we're gonna go and we're gonna stand and we're gonna fight against the people that's contaminating us and poisoning us.
My name is Evacuation.
Dr. Jordan.
Dustin White.
And I will continue to fight for environmental, climate, and racial justice until we can all breathe again.